Welcome. So we have some new people. Just so you know, we haven't been doing introductions because we just have a short period of time with this, but we've had a few people who have been here since chapter one, since the introduction. So that's what, 6 weeks maybe that we've been together. And a few people join every week. So just so everybody knows, these are recorded and you can go watch any of them. And the presentations are all archived. So all of that's available if it's something that you are interested in and would like to explore. So this is called The Unopened Gift, a primer in emotional literacy. Hi, Jen. And what I would like, you're all familiar with it, I know, even if you haven't read every page that we've covered so far. But I'm just curious to hear from a few people. So, as you've read or as we've talked about this, what do you think for you has changed in your emotional literacy? So, not theoretically, but for you, what's changed for you? Like, what are you seeing now? Because this is a primer. This is the beginning of, we start talking about emotional literacy and how it gets developed and what it is. So I'm just curious, does anybody have any thoughts about for them what's changed, what's new, what insights are showing up for them? What would you say? Anybody want to volunteer? And welcome, Thaisa and Maria. Marie, great to see you. And Jen, yes. So what would you say? What's evolving for you, Joe?
Yeah, so maybe I'll add something very interesting that I have observed in myself just today. I have started talking about emotions. I was talking to my daughter, and in my conversation, it felt like I'm upset. So I clarified, I am not upset or frustrated. I'm just expressing what I'm feeling right now, and it has nothing to do with you. So I've started telling people, that so and and then I realized that I've started doing it with many people, with my work colleagues, with my clients. I've started naming emotions, and I don't leave it up to them to interpret it for me.
Hmm.
S-
Yeah.
that's a new thing about me.
Yeah, lovely. One of the other things I hear, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I hear taking responsibility for your emotions, saying, this isn't about you. This is about me. This is about my emotions. For me, that's a huge step because that's something that actually we're taught otherwise. We're taught other people cause our emotions or trigger our emotions or are responsible for our emotions. And I think one of the best things we can learn at this beginning stage is no, they're mine. They're mine. So what am I going to do with them? And not to be concerned about that, just to recognize that nobody else can do anything about them. Only me. I'm the only one. So yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Joe.
that's a wonderful perspective. I didn't thought about it like that, but now that you've said it, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
well,
it does to me.
super. Thank you. Jolene, what are you noticing?
When I have emotions now, I think, what is this emotion telling me? What information am I receiving? And I'm also noticing somatic experiences tied to specific emotions. And so when those repeat, it's easier to identify the emotion.
Yeah, yeah, lovely. So that's what I find too. I'm more and more, uh, it's more and more fluid for me to go right to that question like, huh, wow, look, I'm really annoyed. What's up? What am I so annoyed about? And not to make it wrong, just to name it, just to recognize it and to just see it. It's not abnormal. It's just something that's happening. There's something, and this is what's showing up in me. And what's that trying to tell me? So lovely. Jennifer Jackson.
Yeah, just to kind of add, which I think is a little bit what I've heard you all say, is it's helping me to figure out what's the story I'm telling myself. So when I'm naming that emotion, to kind of question myself or pause to say, well, why am I feeling this? Like, what's the story I'm telling myself about this moment, this person, this situation, whatever it is? So I can feel like, why am I feeling this way? How is it serving me? Do I want to do something different? So that question of like, what story am I telling myself in this moment that's
Yeah,
causing me to feel this?
yeah, lovely. I had a good coach friend who used to say, um, in fact, she would begin with that. She would say, well, the story I'm telling myself is, and then she would say that, and she would say, and the emotion that's showing up because of that is, and it was her way of navigating, but also, I think, slowing down because she was quite fast-paced, but slowing down enough to give herself time to recognize what was going on. But that also connects with what Joe was saying. I'm not putting this on you. I'm saying, okay, I've got this belief, this story. Here's what I'm telling myself. Here's what emotion is showing up. And I'm not saying that's always appropriate or the way we should say it. I just always found it very interesting when she was talking about something, and she would even do that in front of groups sometimes, and it was so lovely because it helped everybody understand what she was going through, what she was experiencing, and it didn't leave it to them, like Joe was saying. I don't leave it to them now. I say it. I don't want them needing to figure it out because I'm pretty clear what this emotion is. Thaisa?
I just
Hi.
add something. Uh, I've been noticing that when I name my emotion, I understand my story. It's been easier to take an action when I realize that that emotion is not helping me. For example, frustration.
Mhm.
Why I am I'm frustrated. So let's try to do something about it. What's the next action that I can take to help myself to feel better, to have another emotion? And it's very interesting how it's quickly when we understand the why and we take responsibility about it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, lovely. Yeah, I find too that just putting a name on it helps, and I think we kind of all know this intuitively. We all resist saying I'm frustrated or I'm angry. We tend to hold back saying that. But I find that when I can say it, then it changes something in my relationship with the emotion. It takes some of the energy out of it. Or it just helps me, like you say, get clear. Okay, where do I go from here? And so for me, I think there's a tremendous power simply in the naming. And I know that this is true for other things too. When we live in the uncertainty of something that's happening physically or medically, it's really distressing. But then as soon as I don't know, your doctor or somebody, your dentist says, what you have is X. You go, oh, okay. It's not that it's good. It's not that it takes it away. It still is there and it still may be distressing, but somehow it seems like it's less distressing because I can name it, which means I can probably do something about it. Yeah. Teresa. Oh, you're on mute, Teresa.
Okay, sorry. So moving a little about emotions and not quite emotions, that is the chapter that we read today, for
Hmm.
today. I was really um, considering this part of, okay, we have not only emotions, but also conditions,
Hmm.
some kind of emotions. And the awareness that I have in reading this time, I read this book like 4 times. This is my fourth time. So not right now, I see that for me, the next layer that is for conditions, we have assessments, interpretations, and predispositions, right? So to understand if the feeling that I am having it's a condition that I feel like an emotion, but it's not really an emotion, it's a condition. So for me, it was very interesting
Mm,
reading this fourth time the book.
yeah, lovely. Thank you,
Yeah.
Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brenda.
Yeah.
Morning or good
Good morning.
afternoon. Um, I've been noticing the tendency of many people and cultures to discount what we consider negative emotions,
Mm.
especially in the States where it's like good vibes only. And it's funny, I saw a girl walking around our neighborhood with that t-shirt on the other day. I'm like, yeah, like a, it's really like um, an encouraged state to be like, just to be always in a what we consider a positive emotion.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
It makes
yeah,
sense, but it's just like I just been noticing it quite a
yeah,
lot lately.
yeah. Lovely. Yeah, and I noticed that too. And I think it's fine, except I think when we do that, what we tend to do is we tend to try to avoid those ones that are less comfortable or the ones we put in the negative basket. And we try to get more of the ones we put in the positive basket. And I don't think that's always helpful because I think then we quit listening to sadness, we quit listening to frustration, we quit and they're not very comfortable. They're sometimes there's some emotions aren't very pretty. They're just not great sometimes. But if you go back to the idea that they're all trying to help you in some way, then for me, they're worth paying attention to. And I've had people who are quite extreme in some of my coaching in the way you say. And I can remember one man I worked with, and he was vice president of something. And, he had a good life. He had a wonderful life. But it was fascinating because everything that came out of his mouth was positive, 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 no negatives, nothing. And at the end, I said, why are we coaching? Because there's nothing wrong in your life. Your life is perfect. That's what you're telling me. And so I don't want to cause problems, but I really wonder if there isn't something not being said here. And then we began to have conversations, but he had a very strong belief that, well, you just don't say anything negative because that's complaining or that's whining and that's not allowed. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that we learn those things sometimes. And I think it deprives us of something emotionally in terms of just recognizing what's happening in our lives. So, yeah, thank you. Marie,
Hi.
hi.
So what I notice in me, I tend to be quick. I tend to respond quickly in conversation. I'm quick, and in life, I think I'm quick to transition from one moment to the next, and particularly verbally, I think what getting more mature with this subject has done for me is it's allowed me to give myself permission to take a beat. And I find now I almost always take a beat in situations from, having a conversation over breakfast with my husband to being in a situation where I start feeling something rising in my body that tells me it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, I'm not sure, um, I- and I don't understand what's going on. That's happened. And Teresa, what you just said, I think is what's working in me, especially noticing in this last chapter. Um, Part of my inner conversation during that beat that I'm taking is what's going on here? Is this a situation? Is this a condition? Is this about me even in the first place? And what am I responding to? Am I responding to a perceived insult or a perceived loss? Um, and that goes with joyful, with high, high energy emotions as well. It's like I stop and I notice what's delighting me or what's giving me rapturous pleasure, or you know, and that's huge. And I think maybe that comes in the realm of agility, perhaps, that I'm sensing that there's a kind of cumulative buildup of awareness, not just a vocabulary, but an awareness of the vocabulary in action. So,
Mhm.
so thank you, Teresa, for helping me knit those two things together.
Lovely. Thank you, Marie. Masum.
Hello, everyone. What I noticed are two things. So, one of which is naming the emotion. After naming the emotion that I was feeling, I kind of uh, disoriented with it. I kind of detached with it because it is not part of my personality. That
Hmm.
is what I think. That is not part of my identity.
Hmm.
So that is the reason it helped me to detach with it and to make changes towards what I feel is right,
Hmm.
what I feel is morally right. So I think this is a very powerful thing that you should name what you are feeling, so
Hmm.
that if you resonate with it, it would be part of your identity. If you don't, then you know what steps you need to take
Hmm.
to change it.
Okay.
Second thing, someone very close to me is feeling a lot of grief because they have lost someone in their life. And at that point, I thought like my emotions are my responsibility. Their emotions are theirs. Actually, what I was trying to do, I was trying to take all the responsibility of their grief on me. So, because they are very close to me and I can't see them like that. And I was not able to communicate because I was feeling so much in
Hmm.
myself and I was not able to be supportive. And that is what they were trying to communicate while they were in grief, that
Hmm.
that they have to do a part of two people's job. They were doing that part.
Ah,
And that made me realize, okay, my responsibility is that I need to be supportive towards them, not to take upon their grief on me.
Huh?
So
Lovely.
these are the two things that I have learned in this 6 weeks.
Thank you. Well, the,
Thank
the
you.
the second thing you just shared for me goes with the clusters that we talked about last week, because what you just described to me is, well, I fall into empathy. I feel what they feel. I take on their pain. I feel their pain. And that serves in one way for them to know they're not alone and I'm there and I really understand them. But the other emotion in that cluster that I find really useful is compassion. I can be with them, I can understand them, but I don't lose my emotional center. So I can still feel for instance, I could feel maybe some ambition for them to support them to change something, maybe. But I don't give that up because I'm in their emotion. And what's interesting is sometimes I work with people who they say, oh, you know what? I think maybe I need more empathy. And I always get curious because the people I meet have so much empathy already. So I always get curious. So tell me why you think you need more empathy. And then we have this lovely conversation because what many people find is that it's not that dialing up empathy would help them. It's more distinguishing between empathy and compassion and having compassion more available for situations like you're describing. Now, I think having them both is essential, and if we can decide which is going to suit the situation better, that's perfect. That's emotional regulation. But it begins with knowing the difference, the distinctions between them, which for me is emotional literacy. So I love what you're saying. And the first thing you said, the way I express that is that we are not our emotions, meaning we're us, we have emotions, just like we're us and we think, right? But we can change our mind, we can change our emotions. So I don't think of it as detachment as much as maybe a distinction between being the emotion and having the emotion. But I think some people don't have that, and then they're very caught emotionally. They don't have any place to turn, and they may judge themselves a lot because they have the story that they are their emotions, and if those emotions aren't emotions they like, then that's a bad thing.
Mhm.
So all of these little pieces for me add up to what I think of as a kind of freedom emotionally, to be in choice, to navigate, to choose what's going to be most helpful for me in any situation, but not just for me, but the relationships I'm in and, how I want to live life. So for me, these are not small things. I have many people who this is a big step for them to recognize what you just said. Oh, lovely. Marcia.
Hello, everybody. I think there's nothing that hasn't been said that really isn't part of what I was going to share. It's such a great
It's
group with
okay.
so much insight. But oops, am I muted? No.
No.
But I will say that this literacy has taken the judgment off of the emotion. I was very much one who kind of thought I was the emotion. It was like a defect that I had in certain areas, that was just who I am. And that has been completely lifted to where I'll say, oh, you're thinking that now, or oh, you're feeling that right now, without any good or bad or any judgment on it. And I'd shared with Dan in an email that through learning about moods, the differences between moods and emotions and conditions, I connected with a mood in my household growing up that I never would have thought it was a mood, but it was. And because I lived in a very happy household, but there were some beliefs that my parents carried about themselves. And I realized I had picked up on that and I was carrying it in a look different scenario, but it was the same underlying belief. And as soon as I realized it was a mood, I thought, I don't have to carry that anymore.
Mm.
And so that was, you know, really priceless,
Yeah.
that insight. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you. And Yash.
Hello everyone. So then I guess where emotion helped me is basically to understand stories of other people. Like if someone is behaving in a certain way, now I'm able to relate he's behaving like this because there is a certain emotion behind it.
Yeah.
So I have become less judgmental now.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
see world in a different way. I can understand if someone is behaving, maybe he's feeling something that maybe he's not able to not able to feel or not able to tell what he's feeling, but I can understand what he's feeling. So I have
Hmm.
become less judgmental and more observant, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, yeah, that's lovely. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity to help people there. And here's what I
Yeah.
mean. If I think, oh, if I see Lucy struggling with her sewing machine and I go, oh, looks like she's frustrated, right? Well, why? Because she's trying to do something and it's taking longer than she expected, or it's more difficult than she expected. But now I have a choice. Oh, she's frustrated. It doesn't mean I need to do anything about it, but I might, if it seems appropriate, say, seems like you're struggling with that. Is there something I can do to help you? So it doesn't mean I should. It just means, oh, look, now I kind of know what's going on with her. Maybe I don't understand everything about it because I'm just watching from the outside. And it doesn't mean I have to do anything, but it also guides me to what might be helpful to do, what might serve her if I, want to. So I think again, one of the things I discovered was the more I understood my emotions, the more sense everybody else in the world made to me. Like now,
Yeah.
I get why somebody would behave that way because that's how I would behave if I was feeling that
Yeah.
emotion. So I love it. Thank you. Love all the insights. And that's exactly what I was hoping to hear is that, oh, okay, you're beginning to see things or you're seeing new layers. And so, yes, I want to be sure that everybody knows this, of course, but so we are recording and these we will share with people. But what I wanted to do, so we've had these sessions, right? And today we're we're talking about not quite emotions. So I wanted to share just a couple of things about these and look at a few, and then happy to take questions. But where this came from is that when Lucy and I are writing the book, we had our criteria. This is an emotion. But then, as we were working with him, we realized there were things that we say or other people say that we think we're naming an emotion. We think we're talking about an emotion, but we realize we're really not. We're not just talking about one emotion. We're talking about something broader than that. So, kind of jokingly, we just started calling these, well, they're not quite emotions. It wasn't anything very elegant or intellectual. It's just the way we referred to these things. And then we realized that, oh, well, there's a lot of these. These go on all the time, and we hadn't been aware of them. So what makes something in our book, literally, not quite an emotion, is that it's an experience, but we can, when we think about it, realize that, oh, but that experience could be provoked by more than one emotion. So that's why it's not quite an emotion, but it's close. And you could call these other things. You could call them emotional indicators. You could call them states. You could call them conditions. I mean, there's lots of things you could call these. But the general idea for me is that we have things that are emotions, and there's no way to reduce those more. They're the story, the impulse, the purpose, and if we take that story, impulse, and purpose, it only describes one emotion. So it's unique. But when we have some of these, we begin to think, oh, okay, well, if somebody says to me, I feel overwhelmed, I get the sense of that. I have an idea of what that means. But if we if we want to be precise, so in coaching or in, conversations of emotions, if we want to be precise, to get to the emotion, we need to go a little bit deeper. Like what's generating that experience that the person is calling overwhelm? And if you think about overwhelm, we often talk about it in the negative, like this is a bad thing that somebody feels overwhelmed. But actually, it could be we're overwhelmed for joy, right? Because we haven't seen somebody in 10 years and now we get to be with them and we might just be so joyful. Oh my gosh, we don't know what to do with ourselves. But there's also lots that are, a little bit on the less comfortable side, like urgency or fear or anxiety or uncertainty. But also then there's excitement. We can be overwhelmed with excitement. And I think often we see children this way. Oh my gosh, they're just so excited. And obligation and on and on. So overwhelm for me is worth taking a look at because it's not an emotion. It's an experience. It's the description of an experience that is emerging from one or more emotions. But again, if I want to get more precise, I want to ask, and what emotion do you think is generating this experience that you're calling overwhelm? So first thing is, you can say overwhelm in my presence and you won't get in trouble. It's not that I have anything against the word overwhelm. It's that I don't use it very often because I think it's vague. I think I can be more precise than that. But I get the sense if somebody says to me, I feel overwhelmed, okay, great. I get the sense that, wow, there's a lot going on in your life, and that's fine. That's an indicator. But what I find fascinating is if you look up overwhelm and where it came from sailing ships being rolled over back in the 1800s, 1700s by rogue waves. And that was a treacherous moment. Like you could probably die if you were a sailor. So overwhelm in its original sense was something very intense and very, well, let's say negative, like it wasn't a good thing for your ship to be overwhelmed by a wave. So I think again, it's a rich term. It tells us something really important, but it's actually like a little story. It's like a little metaphor right there. Right? I feel overwhelmed. And that's what some of these not quite emotions are. They're like little stories, they're metaphors or they're analogies. And then we have others like stressed or distressed, but stressed is what people often say. And if you think about what stress is, it's a sensation that we have in our body. So it's a somatic experience. We're tight, our muscles are tight. And, that could be, again, dread, doubt, uncertainty, anxiety, urgency. There's lots of emotions that could be generating that. And even stress can be excitement, or it can be anticipation, or it can be something very positive, we could say. It could be expecting a really desirable situation, and we feel stressed about it. So all of these fall into this category, is that all of them, they're not quite emotions. There's some form that's either an assessment, a belief I have, like in vulnerability, I assess that I could be hurt. And so that shapes my behavior. But what are the emotions under being vulnerable when I feel like I could be hurt? Well, distrust or apprehension or dread or maybe fear of other people's emotions. All of these have this kind of pattern to them. And again, it's the whole point of putting this here is to fill a gap between, lots of other words and emotions proper. And what are these things that fall in between these? And what do we do with them? Like, how do we relate to them? How do we see them? So again, in social conversation, it's fine. We understand generally what these things mean. The only time I find this to be essential is particularly in coaching. But I think, I'm not a therapist, so I don't do counseling, but I would imagine there it would be very helpful. And then really just in any conversation where we want precision with emotions, then I think they're worth listening for and they're worth investigating if the situation is appropriate. So let me stop there and just ask, okay, so does this make sense? What questions might you have? I have a list of sort of my second favorite six, and I put yours on that list, so we'll get to it in a second. But any thoughts about these, or how you recognize them, or how you work with them, navigate them? I don't know. What do you think about not quite emotions? Yeah, Melissa.
So this particular chapter allowed me to reflect a lot on assumptions, both in myself, assumptions that I make, and then I think assumptions that others make. And kind of a key insight that I had was some of these not quite emotions are actions that are done, to us. Like I think about abandoned, people, I feel abandoned or I feel neglected or something like that. And how easy it is to sometimes make an assumption about, well, then what is the emotion attached to that action? And this chapter really um, expanded on the necessity of checking in with both self and others to determine that precision of, okay, well, I can imagine what clusters of emotions might be present with this action,
Hmm.
but let me really figure out what's there.
Hmm.
So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, lovely. And some of them, like abandoned. What's interesting to me about that is we attribute it to they did it to me. They abandoned me. But really, if I step back from that, if I'm a little dispassionate about it, what can I say happened? Well, let's say, okay, I have a friend, okay, and we're in regular conversation, and then I don't hear from them for a few months. Well, my interpretation can be, well, they abandoned me or they forgot me. In fact, who knows? They may be ill. They may have an issue in their family. I mean, I have no idea what's going on because why? I don't know. But like you say, I have some stories, I have some assumptions, and I have some emotions. And one of the emotions could be disappointment. One of the emotions could be, I might feel I might believe they are disrespecting me, right? So I may feel a certain offense, perhaps, but maybe it's loneliness. Maybe there's a whole range of emotions I might be feeling, but the whole idea of abandonment is really the root of it is just simply we were together, now we're not. I mean, that's fundamentally what happened. So I am completely in agreement with you. First of all, what emotion am I really feeling? And is it disappointment? Is it chagrin? Because, oh, I thought we had a better relationship than this. Is it, what is it? And maybe it's resentment because I haven't heard from them. So what's my emotion? And then, can I imagine what theirs is, even if they're not available for me to talk to, I can still consider that, well, really? So we were close and then they disappeared and I'm kind of attributing that to them intentionally abandoning me, but I don't really know that. That's just a story I'm making up. So I think it's great to be able to take a look at these and say, well, let me get clear on what I'm experiencing. And even if I can't ask them, even if I can't get an answer, what do I imagine is going on that side? Do I really imagine that that was their intention to abandon me? And if so, why? Right? Because of what emotion is that? So I think it's great territory to explore, I think to take away some of those things that we struggle with that maybe we don't need to be struggling with them.
Disrespected is a huge one, I think, especially in America.
Hmm.
We believe that we feel disrespected,
Hmm.
and that's worth exploring.
Yeah. And maybe from our perspective, it does look like, well, they're treating me as if I'm not important. That is how I see it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's how they see it. So, yeah. And then the ultimate question is always, and what am I going to do with that? Okay, if that's the emotion I'm feeling, it's still mine. So what am I going to do with it? And maybe it's get curious and ask them or try to ask them. And maybe it's something else. Maybe it's yeah, anyway, lots of possibilities there. But yeah, it's great to explore because it helps us understand better what's going on with us, which then can help us better understand what's going on in our relationships. Yeah, lovely. Other thoughts, questions about not quite emotions? Well, let me share. Let's start. Oh, Masoom. Yes.
Yeah, so I would like to share an anecdote. So once there was a time where my productivity was really, really low because I was feeling very overwhelmed. Okay. And as we have learned here, that overwhelm is not an emotion, right? So I thought that I am feeling overwhelmed and that is the reason my productivity is low. But when I talked to Jyotsna ma'am, and so she she told me that, "Are you overwhelmed?" I said yes. And then I just rambled on a very big message that my exams are coming up. I have not completed my course. I am very confused with some projects and everything. And then she just said something like, okay, I understand what you are what you are feeling, and you can she just listed that you can do this for this, you can do this for this. And then she just tried help me really well to navigate through it. And then I realized, okay, I'm not feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling confused, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling fearful. And that's where I differentiated between that I'm not feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling all of this. And that is the reason my productivity has decreased. So I would say that it is cocktail of emotions. It is
Yeah.
not something, it is not one emotion. It is
Yeah.
cocktail of so many emotions. And we get so overwhelmed and so much into the pressure that we are not able to bifurcate.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. And it can be one emotion, but it can also be
Yeah.
several emotions. And
Yeah.
like you say, we can't really solve overwhelm, but we can solve confusion.
Yes.
Yeah, we can solve certain parts of that if we can see them,
Hmm.
but overwhelm as a whole, I find it not very it's not very it's not it's not something that's easy to approach and resolve because it's vague. And I
Hmm.
think it's true. We feel that it's to be respected, but if we want to resolve it, I think we need to look at the parts that are generating it, what's underneath of it. Marie?
Yeah.
I just wanted to note that what caught my attention in reviewing this chapter was grief. And what I notice in coaching, and this is kind of brought me forward in a way that surprised me. There is a lot of grief. People are expressing grief about a lot of things, the personal, the professional, the political. And um, what you just said, Melissa, about, I want to echo that, about assumptions. I have found myself in the past working with someone trying to address grief instead of noticing that grief is a package that
Hmm.
contains, Kubler-Ross's stages, anger, denial, sorrow, depression, surrender, acceptance, and just being able to tease that out. That such a subtle and important message for me that
Mhm.
to kind of stop the train. What is, what emotion are you in right now in this grieving period you're
Yeah,
experiencing? And
yeah,
it helped me see grief as an experience rather than an emotion, which I
yeah,
was mistaken about. So
yeah. No, that's lovely. And I would say grief is one of those we use for both. Like we use it like coming to terms with, sadness. Okay, that's fine. We can say we're grieving. But I agree with you, and I love Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's, work on, okay, there's a whole process here. And if you look at her process, all the steps are different emotions, just like you're saying. And I think,
exactly.
oh my gosh, that's so helpful because what step are you in now? Guilt, right? Blame?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Okay. That's very helpful. So, well, let's go
Yeah.
to, we had
Thank
a
you.
few, oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. So, let's see. Let's go to okay, so we have to turn to Marcia because Marcia asked this question. So, Marcia, ask us your question about stuck and stuckness being not quite an emotion.
Yeah, it's one of those again where we it's a condition, it's an experience we're having, and to bifurcate, okay, what it is, the sharing that we just had, what is it that we're stuck about, and what is the emotion about that circumstance? Because
Hmm.
it seems like that's the only way we're going to identify the root of it to get unstuck.
Yeah. So, and this is a question for everybody. So, what emotions, if you heard a coachee or a friend say, "Oh man, I'm really stuck," and you had to name emotions that might be at the root of that experience they're having, what would you guess?
Doubt,
Doubt? Who said doubt?
answer,
Who said
Thaisa.
that? Thaisa. And why
Thaisa.
did you say doubt?
Because sometimes when we are in a doubt, we don't move.
Hmm.
We we don't know if the result will be good or not. So I can't. I don't do anything
That's
if I
right.
have fear to be
Okay.
wrong.
Okay.
Here's the
So we
other
have
one.
doubt, we have fear, right? What other emotions might be underneath somebody saying they feel stuck?
Confusion,
Confusion. And why confusion?
just not knowing what direction is the best, sort of like a combination maybe between confusion and ambivalence.
Okay. Could be ambivalence, could be
It's
confusion.
not, it's not, not seeing a path forward.
Yeah. 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 So what do? You stay where you are. Any others?
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty. Yeah. Uncertainty. Great one. I don't have enough information, so I don't know what direction to move. Yeah.
Pessimism and hopelessness.
Yeah, there's a lot, right? So again, just to work with somebody about stuckness for me is pretty vague. But if we can invite them to reflect on what emotions might be generating that experience of stuckness, because the experience is real for people. It's not like they're making it up. No, no, that's real. They're being sincere, but what they're not doing is saying, "Oh, I get it. This experience I'm having is based on certain emotions. The emotions are the energy that are having me feel stuck. Huh, I wonder what those are." Yeah, so lovely. And you all pass. You all get an A for today. You all get a gold star. So, and Marcia, did we answer your question? Okay, very good. So another one that for me is really interesting is defensive. And if you think about it, we always talk about defensiveness as, oh, that's something bad. But on the other hand, if you think about what emotions generate defending ourselves, huh, that brings up a whole long list. So what emotions might produce the reaction or behavior of defending ourselves, where somebody might say, whoa, they're being really defensive. Jennifer?
What came to mind for me immediately was vulnerable, like feeling exposed or vulnerable or
Okay.
kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I feel like, oh, I could get hurt here. Yep.
Mhm.
So I'm going to defend myself. Perfect. Masoom, what would you say?
I think it is fear of doing something wrong. And so that you are being very defensive, you're putting a
Uh-huh.
wall up.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Put a wall up. Yep. Marcia.
Undignified is what comes up for me.
Okay. And tell us why.
Um, if it feels like something's happening to us that, or judgment's being put on us, or that
Uh,
doesn't resonate with how we identify ourselves to be. And so correct, help me out if maybe there's another way I can express that a little bit
No,
better.
no, perfect. The word I use now is indignation. So I
Mhm.
feel indignation, which means I'm going to protect my boundaries. So yeah, so some people, even though from my side, I could say I'm defending my boundaries, but I'm protecting my boundaries so that they don't get crossed. But to some people, depending on the situation, they might say, "Wow, you're being defensive." Well, that's not a bad thing. If I'm protecting my boundaries, then maybe being defensive is okay, but it comes out of the emotion of indignation. I want to protect my dignity, my self-worth, and no, sorry, you don't get to speak with me that way. Sorry,
Mhm.
nobody gets to talk to me that way. So yeah, lovely. Jen,
I'll add anger and I'll add fear to that.
okay. And
I
why would you
think
add
I
those
think
two?
because when you're defensive and you're like I like and I had protective, so that's what I was thinking of, like protecting your boundary. But if
Yep.
you're getting defensive, you might be getting riled up because you're trying to, prove a point, or so you're
Uh-huh.
getting angry that the person isn't seeing your point of view,
Yep.
or maybe they're presenting new information to you that you're a little bit afraid of and saying, oh, well, I got to protect this belief and value that I used to
Yep.
have.
Yep.
But now you're giving me some other thing to think about that I don't know if I want to be in wonder about yet. Like, I think I'd rather protect my old belief
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Yeah, we defend our beliefs, what we believe to be true. And, that's not wrong. It's like, okay, I believe it this way. So to defend it would make perfect sense. So again, but other people may see that as being defensive, but maybe it's fear, right? Or maybe it's righteousness. I believe I'm right here. And okay. So Jennifer,
Oh, as I was hearing that, what came to mind to me as well was passion. Like, if there are things that you're passionate about,
yep,
that could bring out a defensiveness because you're trying to, stand up for that, support that, protect that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Melissa?
In a completely different direction, shame and guilt. If I feel like I need to protect my identity or my reputation, yeah.
Yep. And could we add embarrassment into your list?
Yes,
Because for me, embarrassment is the place where I get defensive. Like,
same.
yeah, yeah. Joe,
Yeah, righteousness.
righteousness. Yeah, that's another possibility. I think I'm right. Nobody's going to tell me any different. Ananya?
It can be insecurity.
Okay, because I don't feel safe. So it could be, yeah, fear, apprehension. The other one I think could be loyalty. So I think loyalty. I'm going to defend my team. I'm going to defend my group. So I think that can have us defend or be defensive. So I would just say, wow, when we hear that word, for me, that opens up lots of possibilities. Yeah. What about connected? Isn't that an interesting one? We hear this all the time. Oh yeah, I feel so connected. But what are the emotions that allow you? What are the emotions that would have somebody or you say that I feel connected? Ananya, Jolene,
Definitely love. I just did a video on your definition, which is to not judge people and to accept them as the gift that they are. And
mhm.
that's true connection.
Okay, yeah, lovely. I feel connected through love. Any others that, yeah, Joe,
Yeah, I think connected loyalty. I would consider
loyalty, yeah,
loyalty. Yeah.
sure. That's a connection certainly with the group. Yeah. I honestly would say acceptance could be one, right? I feel accepted. So wow, in that sense, I feel very connected. Ananya?
I think it could be belongingness.
Okay, yep. I feel a sense of belonging. So again, for me, I always think back to dignity because we have a sense we belong. There's a place for us. We're where we should be. Yeah. Yash?
I guess it can be trust because when you trust someone, only then you can feel connected.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Trust. Absolutely. And then we have the other side. What about when somebody says, "Oh, Teresa, did you have something else unconnected?"
Honor,
Sorry, honor,
honor, honor.
honor. Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely. Yeah. And what about disconnected? When somebody says, "Oh, I just feel so disconnected," what emotion are they experiencing, do you think?
Loneliness.
Absolutely could be loneliness. Yeah, I feel disconnected. Yeah. Teresa? Oh, you have your hand up from before. Okay. Jen,
Um, Distant or detached?
detached. The emotions that I might put there would be things like apathy. Apathy is a big disconnection because we just don't care. And that's not always bad, right? Sometimes that can help us be in situations where to care would be painful in some way or difficult. Thaisa?
Arrogance. If I feel more than the others, no?
Arrogance, contempt, disdain. There's a few of those in that. in that territory. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ananya,
Fear.
fear. Yeah. Masum,
For me, there are two, disloyalty and not being honest. So
oh, just
I feel instantly disconnected with the person if I find out that they are not
yeah,
honest with me.
yeah. Or insincerity when
Yeah.
somebody's pretending. So
Mm.
we could go on with this, but I think you get the idea. So that there's lots of these, and I would say what's really helpful about them is just to listen for them. I mean, this is what we do. Just listen in conversation and movies, when you read books. Yeah, I mean, they're everywhere. And listen to what you say too, because you use these. And again, there's nothing bad about them, but what's I find very helpful is to be curious about them. Hi, oh, well, when somebody says that, what I wonder what they're experiencing, because I wonder what they're experiencing through the lens of emotions, because it's something different than what I'm hearing, and that's okay, but that can help me understand them better or understand myself better. Yeah. Okay, so for next time, we're gonna read. Let's see. Oh, there's two more here when we feel flat. Sometimes people say, I feel gutted. I think that's kind of a British expression. But anyway, we could go on. There's so many of those. But what we're going to talk about next week is navigating emotions. So we've talked about what are emotions and individual emotions and emotional clusters and not quite emotions. And now part of the conversation is, okay, but how do we put these to work for us? So how do we begin to navigate them? And just a framing again is that when we wrote this book, it was focused on what, the question of what are emotions? It wasn't really focused on the question of how do we put them to use or how do we use them in coaching, or it wasn't focused on that at all, because that would have been 800 pages and we weren't up to write 800 pages. So this is still in the what. So what is navigating? What does that mean? What does it look like? And of course, that spills over into and how do we do it? But the focus is still really on the what. What is this when we talk about navigating emotions or controlling emotions? And I really see this as our relationship with emotions. So one thing to listen for that we might talk about next week is think about what metaphor or analogy you use to describe emotions. And I give you an example. So many times when I work with someone, they say, man, I was on a roller coaster of emotions this week. Ah, interesting. So you have this metaphor about emotions are a roller coaster. Interesting. That says a lot about a person's relationship with emotions. So just listen for that this week. So, what are people saying more generally in terms of their relationship with emotions? But think about this for you too. How do you envision your relationship with emotions in general? Because you have one, you may not have articulated it. And if you don't have one, you could have one. And if you do have one, I find it very useful to be able to go back to that idea. So I'm not going to tell you what mine is today. I'll tell you next week. But, reflect on that and we'll talk about that next week. So what about navigating emotions and what are our relationship with emotions? All right. Well, a true delight to see everybody. Thank you for sharing all your ideas. Wonderful to hear them. And if you want anything this week, write to me. We'll put it in the conversation next week. But hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Uh, Looking for not quite emotions and noticing what's your relationship with emotions. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
Thank
you.
you.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.